Hello everyone, my name is Diatat Avatar, and in this video I will be presenting my midterm project. This project is for my CIS 9467 class taught by Professor Wheeler. So my main goal for this project was to visualize the historical effects and the main sources of carbon dioxide emissions. So after gathering my data, I was able to create this dashboard. So as you can see, it has 5 charts in total, and along with 2 slicers. The slicer on the left can be used to manipulate charts 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the chart on the right can also be used to manipulate the data in chart number 4. So let's talk about the first chart. This chart shows the annual amount of carbon dioxide released into our atmosphere. So if we look at the data over here, I took the year and the amount of carbon dioxide that's released yearly for each specific year. And the measure for this chart is by ppm. So for any given year, there's a given amount of ppm that's released into our atmosphere. And this chart allowed me to check the progress towards combating climate change so far. I wanted to see whether the yearly amount of carbon dioxide emissions had decreased, and after manipulating the data, I was able to see that there was not much progress made towards combating climate change, and that the global growth rate of carbon dioxide emissions had increased since the 1960s. So let's take a look at the 1960s. I'll do a 10-year period. As you can see, for 1960, we released a total amount of 316 ppm into our atmosphere. In 1961, it's 316.7. So the incremental increase was by 0.7 decimal points. If we go over to 1962, it's 317. So a 0.6 to a 0.7 parts per million increase per year. However, if we go to our current period for the past decade or so, we see that the incremental rate has increased a lot. So for 2010, let's say we released 387 parts per million. In 2011, we went from 387 to 389 now. So as you can see, the incremental increase again, it's increasing as we go each year. In 2012, we're now at 391. So as we go further and further into these years, the incremental increase of ppm has been around 2, whereas in the 1960s it was around 0.6 to 0.7. So this goes to show that there's not been very much progress made so far when it comes to releasing carbon dioxide into our atmosphere. So let's clear this filter. Moving on to chart number 2. This chart has the same time period as chart number 1, except we are now presenting the global average temperature. As you can see, there's kind of a cause and effect relationship between these two charts. So as the amount of carbon dioxide that we're releasing into the atmosphere increases, so does our global average temperature. And the exponential increase of carbon dioxide into our atmosphere have actually caused us to hit a record high when it comes to recording temperatures. So if we take a look at let's do from 2010 to 2018, we can see that the past 5 years have been the hottest years ever recorded. Our last year where we didn't have such a high temperature was in 2013. We were at 0.68. But from there on, we just kept hitting high record temperatures, and we've never gotten back to the point of 2013's temperature, which is again 0.68. In 2018, we were at 0.83. So this goes to show that after analyzing the graph, we can conclude that the world needs to urgently reduce emissions, because right now we have a goal to limiting our average temperature to 2 degrees Celsius, and In order to meet that goal, we would greatly have to reduce the amount of emissions in this chart. Next, I wanted to look at the countries that have emitted the most amount of carbon dioxide emissions. So if we go to the data for this chart, as you can see, I have each country in the left column and the year and the amount of carbon dioxide emitted for that year. As you can see, this is a pretty large data set with 61,000 rows. So I had to manipulate the data. So the carbon dioxide for each country was created by adding up their annual emissions over time. And that's how I created this chart. So from this chart, we see that the United States have emitted more than 4 billion tons of carbon dioxide since 1751. Even though this amount is twice the amount that China releases each year, we should know that the United States have been working on decreasing the amount of carbon dioxide they emit each year. China is actually the #1 yearly emitter of carbon dioxide. So there's been some progress here. And if we look at the natural disasters chart, you'll see that it also relates to charts #1 and chart #2. So as the amount of carbon dioxide that we release yearly into the atmosphere increases, causing our temperature to rise, so has the frequency or occurrences of natural disasters. So if we want to take a look at one example, let's take a look at extreme weather. As you can see, there's also an increase in relationship in this chart. From, I would say, the 1950s, the amount of extreme weather that we have incurred have increased, I would say, pretty significantly. And again, note that there is a relationship between these three charts over here. And lastly, I wanted to look at the carbon dioxide emissions by sector. So the percentage for each sector was calculated by aggregating the yearly amount for each sector. And the data for this chart is over here. So for any given year, I was able to get the amount of carbon dioxide released for each sector. And again, after aggregating all of this amount, I was able to narrow each down into a percentage. And as you can see, for electricity and heat production, they're still the single largest source of carbon dioxide emissions. Even though we have been working on renewable technologies, this sector continues to be the #1 source of global carbon dioxide emissions. Transportation has also increased as I was manipulating the data. I see that each year it's also increasing. And that's it for my project. Thank you very much, and I hope you guys learned something.